Hello and welcome to tristatevoice.com. Today, or tonight it is, I guess, we are joined by a very special guest, Pastor Joe Cortese, a good friend of mine, a good friend of Tri-State Voice for many, many years. And another thing I want to mention too is he's a big Commanders fan, Washington Commanders. And that's something we have in common and something that we've lamented over for many years. With texts during games and much lamenting. But Pastor Joe and Pastor Melissa are the pastors of Crossroads Tabernacle in the Bronx. And if it was just a little closer, it would be my church, but it's just not. So what are you going to do? But always felt a great blessing and a great welcome when I've been there. So thanks for your friendship and thanks for your great church, Pastor Joe.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Ditto everything back at you. If I was in Jersey, I would be reading your paper, and and, and I
Not sure
would
that makes sense, but since it's online. But
yeah. No,
but I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
yeah, 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 yeah.
We would be we
No,
would be going over it in person. We'd be meeting more.
absolutely.
We'd be having more lunches and more dinners, and it would be a great situation. So let's just a quick talk about the Commanders. They're off to a 2-0 record. It's much to our surprise, probably, and life is good for the Commanders right now. What do you think?
I don't know what to do. I'm literally screaming. I'm out of control. I'm having these moments of glossolalia that are happening during the game, and reminding me of my Pentecostal roots. And it's just incredible to see what is going on. And it's a whole, it's a whole new thing. It's new ownership, new culture, new
Mm.
everything, and you can just feel it. And I'm so happy for the organization as well as being ecstatic because I've been following them since I was a little kid. John Riggins was everything,
Yes,
and so here we are. And then to find another Washington fan, up here in the East Coast,
crazy.
is really great. So it's incredible. You can't tell me that God doesn't use football to bring people together. Look at our friendship. He used the Commanders.
It's very
I can't believe
communal.
we're saying Commanders.
I
I'm
know.
trying very hard not to say the other word.
Me too. Me too. But yeah, you're in New York. I'm in New Jersey. But yet we're in the middle of Giants country and a little bit of Jets country. But yet we are the rebels. We wear the maroon, the burgundy and gold, and we don't care. And we take some abuse from people in this area. But just real quick, how did you become a Commanders fan, Redskins fan?
Yeah, the Hogs.
Mm.
I think it was that. It might have been the Super Bowl. Against the Dolphins. Remember the Killer Bees. I remember those teams, but no, it was 44. John Riggins. It was the Hogs. It was that whole scene that just like won my heart. I remember being a fan of them, loving them in the 70s too. With Kilmer and just watching some of those games. And I think I had a friend in Spring Valley, Rockland County, who also he was a Redskin fan, and I found that so weird, but I loved it. And I remember he had a helmet, and so there was something about those days, and then something connected. But I think it was the Riggins and the Hogs and Joe Gibbs, and that was it. Those guys just early 80s won my heart, and
Yeah,
it's just been
they won 3 Super Bowls in the 80s and into the early 90s, I believe. And that was
yep.
really Coach Gibbs, who was a Christian man too. So that was kind of nice to have that had him as
Yeah.
a coach, right? And yeah,
Yeah. And then, I mean, there was that year against the Raiders that hurt. I
Mm.
couldn't believe that because I thought that I mean, they got pounced on. But anyway, it
Yeah,
was. I've been there, and then yeah, Ripon was the last thing. I remember that was the first Super Bowl party that we held at our church.
wow.
Yeah, because the pastor at
I
the
wish
time
I
was the
know.
associate. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're doing some other great things that we're going to talk about later too at the church coming up the first Fridays. We'll throw that out as a little teaser, but we'll talk more about that. But let's talk a little bit. We're going to talk about the new project, which is Kenosis. which is 5 songs that you've put out recently. But before that, let's talk about your history and as a musician, and your family has a great legacy of music as well, traveling around and different things. So why don't you just talk about that for a few minutes, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. The family package was this: the wife, the mother, was the evangelist
Mhm.
who preached, and she traveled around with her band. And her band was her husband on piano and her 3 daughters that sang. And they were called the Cortese Sisters. They came out with an album in 1976. And later on, they became more known as the Cortese Trio. And then I was the brother. I was a lot young. I'm 8 years younger than my youngest sister. So I was really kind of little. But then as I started maturing, in my own, instrument on drums, they started giving me permission to play more and more with them. And, Tom, the other day I found a picture of the Cortese Trio playing live in Giant Stadium. I think the
Whoa.
place was just built in the mid
Yes.
'70s. I think it was like one of those Jesus '78
Oh, okay.
what do you call it? Not conference festivals.
Hmm.
And I have a picture of theirs, and there they are, my sisters, my father, and me on drums in the middle of this Whopper Stadium, which is such a
Amazing.
cool memory. Amazing.
Yeah.
I almost forgot about that. And so that's what the family ministry was, and they traveled all around the United States, South America, Central America, um, and um, and then eventually, after that whole season, my mom was called out of the world of evangelism and missionary work to open up a local church, and so all of that music in us just now went into a local church mode, which now turns into becoming musical directors and choir directors and stuff like that. But we have a rich heritage. My father was a classically trained pianist, a concert pianist, amazing. And of course my 3 sisters sang, but the middle sister, Damaris, was one who excelled, and started breaking out into the world of jingles in the '70s and
Hmm.
'80s, maybe even to the '90s. She was one of the most in-demand jingle singers, and she actually gave people like Luther Vandross and Ruben Blades and Patty Austin. I mean, she contracted a lot of those people, and they had never done jingles before. And
Wow.
so she's been real influential in that world. And then she eventually had her recording contract with Columbia Records, and so and I also studied classical piano and then went on, just to obviously take drums more seriously. And I think at the age of 18, I was invited to play in Roberta Flack's band.
How about that?
And yeah, it's an incredible story. At the time, my friends were in the band, and they made a way for me to get in. And I played with her probably, like until probably around 2021. Yeah, I wasn't married yet. And then comes the call to ministry.
Mm.
And
And
anyway,
just
and I
one
just
with Roberta
good.
Flack, did you do touring? Did you do
Yeah, the album,
recordings?
yeah, the album, yeah, not recordings. The recording was Oasis. That was the album that had come out. So I was a part of the band that toured that album.
Okay.
So if anybody that's a fan of Roberta, if they ever wonder what era was it, it was the Oasis. No, I was only 5 years old when "Killing Me Softly" came out, but I had the distinct pleasure of playing that song.
That's awesome.
Decades later, and that was an incredible experience for an 18-year-old. Tom, they say that you haven't graduated from the School of Music unless you've passed through two schools, Miles Davis and Roberta Flack.
Mm.
And I'm happy to say that I made it through the Roberta Flack School of Music. And the closest I came to Miles Davis was that I played drums for Daryl Jones's band, and he was the bass player for Miles Davis in the '80s after Sting, and that was an incredible highlight. Again, I'm a kid during.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I think I'm still a teenager or early 20s.
And how did you sense the call to kind of, how did you describe it? A call to ministry and
Oh man. Yeah, it's it's a God thing when you are at the what many would consider the peak um of your time in music. The time of Roberta, and all of a sudden, it comes with a conflict first. The conflict was this: Roberta was going to be doing the Johnny Carson show. This was going to be a major, major moment for her because she was trying to kind of pick up her career after her dominance in the 70s. There was a little bit of a lull. Remember, Donny Hathaway passed away, which was her partner. And after that, I think she was trying to find her way again. She connected, I think, with Peeble Bryson for a little bit, but Roberta was still trying to get back up to that, put out another hit and all this other stuff. So it was a big moment for her. But she's got this kid on drums. And I remember she told me, Joe, I think I think for the Johnny Carson show, I want Buddy Williams, Buddy Williams to play. And I remember I was devastated because I also was looking forward
Yeah,
to,
sure.
that next benchmark, and it was taken away from me. I remember, and emotionally, you already know, I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't mature enough to be able to handle that. But that moment was so devastating for this 18, 19-year-old that it completely shook my foundation, and it actually cleared the ground for me to even imagine that it might be time for me to walk away from this world, because my mother desperately needed
Mm.
help at that time. There were things going on in Crossroads that were tough to watch as her son. And I know that um, she needed help. And I just felt, Tom, so much peace about walking away from the music industry and saying, Mom, I'm here to help. And I started to help her. And I started as the porter. From the
Right.
porter, I moved on to helping her with the youth. You need somebody to babysit the youth. Then after the youth, that evolved into the musical director, and then from the musical director into her associate, and then of course in '98, she passed the mantle. She knew exactly what she was doing.
Yeah.
She was grooming and priming me the whole time because she knew stuff I didn't know.
Right.
So that's how that
Well,
kind of
we
goes.
when we intersected, it was I think 1999. So she was senior pastor, and you were at that time associate pastor, music director, kind of.
Yeah, I was her associate from '94 to '98. Kicking and screaming the whole time, Tom.
Hmm.
The only way my mom was going to be able to lock me down and get me, or get me out of the number two spot and embrace the number one spot, is that during like a Marianne Brown crusade with the Upper Music Company, she orchestrated like, um, it's not like a coup, not a coup d'etat, but what would you call it when you secretly invite a presbytery to show up to the concert
Mm.
and literally have a takeover in the middle of this concert? And they ordained my wife and I
Wow.
on the spot in front of 800 people,
I don't know what the
almost
word.
against
I don't know what the word is for that.
against my will.
It's
And my mother said,
unprecedented.
unprecedented. It was almost like, we're forcing you. This is it. But because she knew my fears and intrepidation and all that other
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
But it was an incredible night. Whoever was there will never forget it. It was a complete surprise attack, and God was there, and we truly surrendered on that night. And there's pictures somewhere where you see
Wow.
this crowd and you see this presbytery getting around me, and they're like, "Listen, sucker, today you were ordaining you, and tomorrow you will be the senior pastor of this congregation." It was
Wow.
beautiful. It was, yeah,
Yeah, I guess you have no time to get nervous about it, and it just kind of happens.
exactly.
That's awesome.
Smart lady.
When I met you, it was through a good friend of ours too, Sam McHale, introduced us, and we met. And I think you were doing an event with Nikki Cruz and the Storytellers, and you invited me and my wife, and you're like, you got to come and experience this for yourself. And then you said something like, "Are you faithful to email?" And I'm like, first of all, who says that? I'm like, I am faithful to email because I guess, you wanted to communicate with me. We wanted to, stay in touch. I'll never forgot that. Are you faithful? And I've tried to stay faithful to email since, and you as well. But that always, I don't know why I remembered that, but I remember ridiculous things sometimes. But we did come that night, and it was amazing night, and the storytellers and the production was like, we were like, is this Broadway? Like, we were like blown away just by the production of I think it was like the city apartment kind of set. I don't know exactly which one it was.
Rooftop, maybe rooftop or power. Yeah, it
Yeah.
could have been rooftop, man in the middle. There was a bunch.
And then from then on, we always had a great connection, and then with Tri-State Voice, and we'd write about things, and you become a good friend. And then I think it wasn't for a while till we discovered the Commanders connection too, but we did have the email connection first, and also the Holy Spirit connection, which is the most important one out of them all. So I just I've always appreciated you, and Pastor Melissa, and your whole family really is incredible. So let's talk about this new project and kenosis, and describe the inspiration behind the title and some of the songs, because I love some of the names of the songs as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Storytellers, and for those that don't know, the Storytellers was Pastor Mario Gonzalez always used to call the Storytellers a movement. He wasn't comfortable calling it a group or a band. It was a movement, and it was a movement that was birthed out of a great need, a need through co-laboring with Nikki Cruz. We realized that we were reaching out. I guess that's the word. Some of these words I don't use anymore because there's better ones for them. But we were trying to, I like this, we were trying to touch the lives of young people, and we needed the right tools. And so we had to embrace a musical style that was not secondary to us. Hip hop was a little bit. We came from a little bit more of a progressive background as a family, classical, jazz, gospel, R&B. But I needed friends, and so I went out and got some help. And the help that I got ended up becoming this troupe called the Storytellers, that were filled with musicians, rappers, singers, actors, actresses, comedians, all kinds of people. And during that time, Tom, I wrote all the music for the Storytellers. And what I did was I would bring these songs that I had written, and I would bring them to the rappers, and then of course they would lay down their poetry on this bed of music. But that bed of music was never written primarily for them. It was music that I had been writing as a songwriter for either a more instrumental context or a vocal context. But I decided, you know what, these songs are ready to go, and I'm gonna let these rappers lay their work down on top of this. Kenosis, the new release, is really a revisiting of all of not all of it, but some of that music, some of my favorite parts of that music. So when people look at this album, they're going to see things like Kenosis, The Atonement, The Prodigal. It's like, wait a minute, I know those titles and I recognize some of this, and they will because, yeah. And then there's a couple new songs on there. Blind Man. Blind Man was a song from an older Storyteller, album. But I wanted to bring these songs back and kind of introduce them to a whole new world, the way they were originally written, because they can stand alone as instrumental music as well. And I'm a songwriter. I write lyric, poetry, prose. My favorite instrument is the voice, and my favorite genre, of course, would be any music that is lyrical and has a singer. But because of my musical background and my training, I also deeply love instrumental music. But the instrumental music still has to be lyrical. It still has to be approachable. It still has to be accessible to the audience. So this music is the kind that has a lot of jazz sensibilities to it, which is where in jazz the standard typically is you introduce the song and you play the melody of the song down once. And then what happens is you go back to the top of the song and you take it down with iterations
Hmm.
through soloists of the same form, even though it's not stuck to the melody that we heard at the top. So
Gotcha.
you get a chance to hear the melody and what I'm trying to say, and then you start to hear everybody else after that trying to say what they have to say about
Hmm.
that. So that's a
Wow.
very jazz standard form. Well, I'm doing it without losing the essence of R&B, soul, hip hop. Um, to me, when if I'm playing with my band and you're in the audience and you're not physically moving, something is not right. Groove is something that that's when I know we're reaching the innermost part of who you are. And not to sound spooky, that's when I know I'm reaching your heart because your heart moves at beats per minute.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when we talk about groove, when we talk about dancing, we need to understand why people come alive is because we're literally matching the rhythm of their heart, the rhythm of their gait when they're walking. This
Hmm.
is some powerful, powerful stuff. And so I'm hoping that this new album and this music not only has the musical things and the melody and the chord changes and all that stuff, but it also is happening in a rhythm and a beat that is in harmony with your heart.
Yeah. Well, I've listened to it multiple times. It's like 23 minutes around there, 22,
Mm-hmm.
23 minutes. So I'll put it on and just really enjoy it. I'm not a big music expert, but even when you put out the race, that was one of my favorites. I think I wore out like three of those CDs back in the day before digital. And the song "The Race," and then there was some instrumental on there as well. I
Yeah.
and I always loved them. So I just think this new project I think is going to really be. I think people really love it. So who are the? I only have a couple of minutes left, but if you could just say who are the people on there? I know your son is on there too, and some great
Yeah.
musicians. So let's just talk about
Yeah.
them, and then we'll talk about maybe you could just segue right into First Fridays for a couple.
Yep. Um, Tom, the musicians, the people from our neck of the woods wouldn't know, who they are, um, and that's okay. But anybody from the world of modern progressive music and all those other genres I talked about, they know who Bob Franceschini is. They know who Manuel Valera is. These are Grammy nominated
Hmm.
winning musicians that are monsters in their own right and in their world. And I just can't believe that I get to know them and then I get to be in a relationship with them. Bob Franceschini has played with the whole world, and I think ever since Michael Brecker passed away, I think people look to Bob, or we call him Bobby F, as sort of like the remnant of that level of playing and musicality and all that other stuff. Manuel Valera is the Cuban phenom that came over from Cuba in the 80s, came from a prestigious family of musicians, but and landed like many in Miami, and then eventually made their way up to New York. And Manuel Valera is yeah, I can't. It's just incredible. Carlos Chang is an Ecuadorian
Hmm.
that has Asian uh, Asian roots as well, and he's another phenom, well known in South America, and he happens to be not only on the album, but he happens to be the guitar player at Crossroads right now, and people know Carlos Chang, Mike Stern, who's probably the one of the biggest names in jazz music. It's like one of his favorite guitar players. There's a YouTube that went viral of Carlos Chong going into 55 Bar and asking to borrow Mike Stern's guitar. You don't do that. You don't ask, you don't say, BB King, hi, can I borrow your guitar and play it? And he borrows it and he plays it. And Mike Stern goes crazy and tells the whole club, come around, you got to see this. This
Wow.
guy's amazing. And it's on YouTube. It's really funny. Well, this guy is he's in our world, him and his beautiful family. And then my son Jordan is on bass. Um, and this is the group that I'm currently working with right now. And you said I'm no expert on jazz. That's okay. You don't have to be. But when you hear these guys, even someone who doesn't have really an ear for that can understand that these are virtuosos that are having a ball with my music. So anyway, that little bit about them.
Cool. Well, I'm an expert on the Mets and on the Commanders, so pretty much all the useless information that is going to get me nowhere, I am an expert on. So there's that. So the event, First Fridays, it's coming up. Is it October the 6th at Crossroads? Is this the
October
debut of the Kenosis as well? Is this just you're going to play songs from there too? And then talk about a little bit about the motivation. We only have like maybe 3 minutes, but
Sure.
the motivation between getting people out of the house, COVID, and just giving them a place to kind of dance, kind of celebrate, to kind of enjoy music.
Yes. First Fridays, this is the first Friday of First Fridays.
Okay.
And we are hoping to develop a rhythm. People never really get connected to anything unless you're committed to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to call it for. By the way, I still tell people, can I email? Wait a minute, are you faithful to email? Because I'm realizing now that a whole other older generation is no longer. They're not doing email anymore. They're doing texts.
You were prophetic. You were prophetic in that ask.
I'm like, I can't. You're 67 years old and you're telling me to text you. I'm like, really? But anyway. Email is still a big part of my life. And, texting is for yes, no, I'm outside, lock the door. That's it. But anyway, so quickly, First Fridays, two things are aching me. The first one is how hard it is to live in New York City. Living in New York City, everybody thinks, wow, the capital of the world, and it must be amazing. And the skyscrapers and Broadway. Well, after Broadway and after the bright lights, are some other things that are really hard to contend with. A super high cost of living, a nonstop vigilance, right? I mean, literally, tri-state area, nonstop vigilance. We are always having to be on guard. That gets exhausting. And then I think about the commute of so many New Yorkers that is, again, harrowing. And I am looking to create a space, a place, and a safe place. And when I say safe place, I mean like really safe. Like when you come there, you know that you're being taken care of, watched, and there's security all around. But a place that when people come home on Fridays, there's a place to go to, because combined with the rat race of living here, which is exhausting, then there's the post-COVID world, which is a whole other conversation. There, between isolation and loneliness, things are really, really, really tough. And data shows that people are seeking artistic expressions more than ever. People are spending more money to go to museums, to go hear live music,
definitely,
to do anything that has anything to do with art, because at the core of it, people want to feel again, feel deeply. And it's in these kind of places people want to feel, and people want to feel through connections. And so we're hoping that First Fridays is both a space and a place where the whole, thank God it's Friday. Yes, it is. Thank God. Come be with us. It's only $10. What does that mean? That we're just trying to cover our expenses, which is just really taking care of things like hospitality and whatever musicians or entertainment that we're looking to bring in. People want to be able to dance, and I know dance is a funny thing in our world as well of faith, but it's becoming less of a thing, and it's becoming more of a freedom. And so we want a place where you can dance or not dance. And then a place where there's live music. There's a place with refreshment and I'll say fellowship, but just connections, being together, and easy. And so this is what this is the motive behind First Fridays. The next one will be November 3rd. Hopefully the one after that will be the first Friday in December. And we'll keep going as long as we're in that building. We're going to try to keep doing this, and the space is perfect for it.
Okay.
And so we'll see what happens.
That's great. Now, where can we get information? Give out some websites for Kenosis, for your other music projects, for First Fridays.
Yeah, well,
first,
crossroadsinthebronx.com is the easiest thing to remember. Crossroads in the Bronx, and there you can get to information on First Fridays. Of course, all of our social media, same thing, Crossroads in the Bronx. That'll get you there. Kenosis is streaming everywhere, which is so cool. We can say that. All you have to do is type in Kenosis or type in Joseph Henry Cortese, and wherever your favorite platform to hear music is, you can hear Kenosis. And listen, like you said, it's only 5 songs, 25 minutes. Tom, the days of 10, 12 songs, people don't have time. You know, how long does it take for me to get to work? That's the time I have to listen to an album.
No double albums, no double live.
Double vinyl. Oh my God.
With the lyrics. I wish. With the lyrics in there too, you know.
Liner notes.
Yeah. So well, great. We'll be promoting that too with Tri-State Voice, and be happy to do it. But it's been great to spend a little time with you. And when you're talking about COVID, I remember you were my go-to on Wednesday nights, because you and Pastor Melissa would have your, Crossroads, for about an hour, and it was so great. And there was scripture reading, and there was art, and there was just ministry happening, and it was one of my go-tos. And it was like, I said, you and Bishop Donald Hilliard from Cathedral down in Perth Amboy, and he was on every night. You were on once a night. He was on every night for about 100 nights in a row. So he would minister to people too. So thank you for all you did back then, and thanks for all you're doing at Crossroads Tabernacle. It's been great to spend a few moments with you.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for being faithful to email and a faithful colleague and committed. And your heart for the city is super clear. You're an easy read, Tom. That's why you're so beautiful. You're an easy read. No pun intended, but anyway. And I love that. I love that about you. And I just hope that as long as I'm alive and in this city, I'm doing something with you.